What's going on, everyone? Kim Becker and Drew Kreisman here with your weekly AMA for the Colorado Rockies. Drew, how do you feel about the Rockies today in this very moment?
Not great, Kim. When you lose 4 in a row in Atlanta by a combined score of 40-12, you have not played good baseball.
Okay, I had not put those numbers together. I had not done the addition on that. When you say it that way, I am mad at myself for starting this off that way. But unfortunately, what's done is done.
I won yesterday. Huh?
Okay, that's true. We got one. They're back on track. Maybe a winning streak in our future.
Are you a Mighty Ducks fan, Kim?
Dude,
the original Mighty Ducks?
Yes,
movie?
yes.
One of my favorite lines in that is, I can't remember the young girl's name, but she's explaining to Gordon, and she says, one time we almost only lost by 5, and we almost scored a goal too.
The positives, right?
That's
you
right.
Look at the glass half full. You look at the positives, the silver linings. It could always be worse.
That's right.
That's right. All right. Well, we do have some questions here, believe it or not, from some fans or from some people who just have nothing better to do and want to know about the Rockies. I don't know.
Sure.
I'll find out. I'm curious. I'm very curious. Always love your insight, Drew. So we'll start this one off here. Can the Rockies win under the current ownership on purpose, or is the best we can pray for another Rocktober?
Ooh, okay. So let me unpack this just a little bit. One of the reasons why I am so adamant about pushing back against the notion that Rocktober was some wild fluke of happenstance and magic and lightning struck and all of that is because it tends to lead to this thought process that the only time the Rockies have ever done anything good at all, it's been by accident. Unfortunately, that's not true. Maybe fortunately, that's not true.
Fortunately.
Yeah. Believe it or not, the Rockies were good in 2007 and 2009 and 2010 by design. They were good in 17 and 18 by design. Now, they've often been bad, not by design. And I think that people really struggle with this, and I understand why. Because the owner of the Rockies tends to say and do some pretty unjustifiable things. However, where I have the biggest disagreement, I think, with a lot of Rockies fans and media out there, is that I don't believe that Dick Monfort doesn't care about winning. I don't. That's a fundamental difference there. I think that's a strong belief of most people that I talk to in the Rockies community. He doesn't care about winning. But I see him sit in front row of every spring training game. I hear stories about how emotional he's been about certain players who've left the team or retired, this, that, or the other. My belief is that Dick Monfort is bad at running a baseball team, not that he doesn't care about running a baseball team. And so, yes, I believe the Rockies can be successful again, and I believe that they can be successful again by design under current ownership. Do I think that's the best case scenario? Of course not. I've been if Dick Monfort would have sold the team 10, 15 years ago, that'd have been great, right? I'm all there and in favor of that. But yes, even with his admittedly frustrating philosophy of let's make the playoffs every 2 out of every 5 years, that thing that he said, quite frankly, most baseball owners who aren't the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Cubs believe that. They just don't say it out loud.
Right.
So
that's when it gets tricky, when people remember it and they can go back to it.
Yep. But if you do make the playoffs 2 out of every 5 years, then you've got 2 chances at the dance. And in baseball, anyone who makes the dance can win the World Series. Anyone who is playing the right brand of baseball at the right time can win. So yes, the Rockies can win. They got to the World Series with Dick Monfort as their owner, and they would have won it if they didn't have to sit around for 10 days and wait for the Boston Red Sox. So yes, that can happen again. Is it likely? I'll take a sip of my coffee now.
I'll join you.
What's you might prefer a possibility to a probability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing is impossible. Nothing is out there I can't even finish that thought, actually. I'm just going to move on to this next question. Okay. Next one. Ownership spends, but spends badly, which is much or more a reflection of the GM and the staff, the general attitude of quote unquote, okay is good enough, sucks. Agreed. What, if anything, do you think will be done to turn the franchise around? So this is kind of going off what we were just talking about. We'll elaborate a bit.
Yeah. So in the immediate, I will say that the formula, okay is good enough. The 2 out of every 5 years we go to the postseason, that's kind of on track.
But is that okay? Is that what we qualify as okay? 2 out of 5 years?
It's actually it's better than the average in
I would
Major
say
League
it's better.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Fans don't like to hear it because they want to hear, we want to make the postseason every year. We want to win the World Series every year, right?
Of course. But realistically, come on, people.
Right. And so when you look at the Rockies' history, 90s were pretty rough, only made it the one time in 1995, and then long drought until 2007, right? That's their longest drought. Then you look at it again, 2007, 2009, they go. Then you've got a long drought, 17 and 18, they go. Yeah. And I do think in the next couple, and those came out of, in both circumstances, a large group of young prospects coming up through the system and powering the team to a better version of themselves. And in 2007, it was Todd and the Toddlers, right? Todd Helton, Matt Holliday, Garrett Atkins, and all those guys. And then 17 and 18, it was Blackmon and Arenado leading a group of young prospects like Trevor Story, Kyle Freeland, and John Gray. So 2 years from now, we're going to be looking at a very similar thing. Zach Veen, Drew Romo, along with these guys, Tovar, Doyle, and Jones, you hope are still around, and so forth. Who the pitchers are going to be, I have no idea, but that's not – we're talking 2 years down the line. But that is – in terms of grand philosophical changes for the Colorado Rockies, folks, I'm here to tell you, don't hold your breath. But in terms of being more successful on the field – it can, and I believe will come from the place it almost always does for this team, and that's from the internal improvement and the pretty quality farm system they have.
All right. Okay. Well, that's a good next step. We can look at that one, look ahead to that, keep that hopefully positivity a little bit in the back of our minds. But next one up, we'll kind of pivot here. Very sad news came out this morning regarding George Frazier. What do you remember most about his time here?
So I, of course, remember George Frazier as a broadcaster. I'm not quite old enough to have seen him play. But I'm very lucky to have become friends with Drew Goodman over the years. And I know that Goody is very, very close with Frazier, and he's who I immediately thought of. Everyone I've ever talked to who knew George, and I never met George Frazier, unfortunately, has said that he's just one of those guys that would give you all the time of day, stop and talk. Nobody's got a bad thing to say about George Frazier. I remember him as the voice of the Rockies when I really started watching them every single day on television. If you're like me, you remember a time when the Rockies weren't on TV all the time. But the first several years, it was listening to the radio.
Yeah.
When we finally got a TV package that carried the Rockies, the play-by-play and color commentary was Drew Goodman and George Frazier. And I'll always be able to hear George's voice in my head. The way he told stories, the way that, sometimes he could go off the rails a little bit and start talking about his playing days, but the guy loved baseball. Yeah. And it came through in everything that he said. So when I think of Rockies broadcasts, when I think of the voices of the Colorado Rockies on television, it will always be for me, Drew Goodman and George Frazier.
Okay, yes, some good words there, Drew. Obviously, it's really nice when you have a broadcaster that you can tell is super passionate and loves the game that they're talking about. So definitely some memories in that one that will last forever with you. We'll pivot here again. Is Elias Diaz the only Rocky with a chance to be named an All-Star this year?
Surprisingly, no. As bad as the team has been, they've got 2 legitimate all-star candidates in my mind. Elias has been better all year. He's been there from the beginning. He's been at the top of all the leaderboards for catchers in terms of defense and offense. And well, those are the 2 things that you need to be good at in order to be a good ball player. And so I honestly think he should become the first ever Colorado Rockies catcher to be named to the All-Star game. But I worry a little bit for him because I think Ryan McMahon might just sprint by him and take the spot. And I suspect the Rockies will only get one because that's how voters tend to think. But McMahon has been so good since the end of May. It's almost mind-boggling. Since he moved back to third base, he's got an OPS over 1,000. He's smashing home runs every other day. He's got 12 multi-hit games in the last couple of weeks. And that's all in addition to the fact that he's been the best defensive third baseman all season long. Yes, I know the guy who used to play for the Rockies. Look at his defensive numbers. Not that good. Bad this year. Ryan McMahon might actually win the first Gold Glove in a long time not to go to Nolan Arenado this season. And it looks like his offense is finally at that elite level as well. So Ryan McMahon could finally end up being that guy. But believe it or not, the Rockies do have two very legitimate all-star candidates.
Believe it or not, some silver linings there, some exciting things for that answer at least, right? All right, cool. All right, last one here before we wrap this guy up. What is going on with the pitching staff, Drew? The starters have really struggled as of late, just to touch on one thing that's been an issue.
Yeah, they're not very good. No, I hate saying stuff like that. And a lot of it's not even on them to some extent.
No.
These guys have been thrown into the fire. The Rockies are on their 8th and 9th and 10th spots on the depth chart for their 5-man rotation. We never should have seen Carl Kaufman at the big leagues this year. He wasn't ready. The bottom spot has been an absolute black hole. Jose Urania at the beginning of the season was probably the worst starting pitcher in all of baseball. And then they gave the job to Nelson Lamet for a little while, and he became the worst starting pitcher in all of baseball. It's been gone. And Austin Gomber, I don't know. I'll need to do an entire podcast on this coming up soon and an in-depth article. And it's sad because there was a lot of hope for Gomber. I'm not out of hope for Gomber yet, but I'm running out. He's getting hit real hard all the time. And it's just brutal to see. That said, Kyle Freeland's been okay. And though I know both of them just got absolutely obliterated, because I did a podcast talking about how good Connor Siebold and Chase Anderson have been this year. So naturally in their next starts for both of them, they got absolutely annihilated.
Yeah, terrible.
But again, Chase Anderson wasn't even a guy I thought was going to be on this team. You know, he was a journeyman veteran reliever who might have been retired, but the Rockies had 4 of their 5 starting rotation members get hurt, so they made a call. And Anderson's actually been solid. So in addition to it just being a miserable situation from an injury standpoint, they also just don't have the depth and didn't have the depth. And it was always going to be a situation where the Rockies were going to struggle anyway. Injuries to the starting pitching were just going to make that 10 times worse.
Oh, boy. You jinxed it, Drew.
I know. I shouldn't have talked about either of them having been good.
No, totally. All right, guys. Well, hopefully the Rockies have a better week this week than they did last week in Atlanta. Like you said, off to a better start, maybe from exactly 7 days ago, but we'll find out. Summer is finally here in Denver, so hopefully we can at least get some fun games in Coors Field, some nice weather, and hopefully some Rockies wins. Yeah,
they've been better at home of late, and at least they're playing the young guys. At the very least, you can get excited about some Tovar and some Doyle and some Nolan Jones and even a little Coco Montez.
Yeah. Love it. All right, Drew, thank you so much to everybody that sent in questions. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.